thank you all for being here on this Sunday morning and allowing me to be part of this as well. It's an honor to be here with these ladies who, pretty much rule the world. Can you hear me?
No.
Hello? Is that better? Hello? Okay. So, why are we here today? Obviously, we have three very powerful women on stage, but I'm sure it took a lot for them to get to where they are. So with no further ado, we're going to talk about some of the, statistics, some of the things, very sobering facts of all of the things that they've had to overcome, not just individually, but also just as women in general. So some of the things that, that are very important to know, in the food industry, only 1 in 5 C-suite leaders is a woman. So that's a lot for them to be here today, that 1 in 5 statistic. Only 19% of the women in the food industry make it to the C-suite at all. So, we go to restaurants all the time. We see a lot of people in those industries. So only 19% of those that actually make it to that level are women in the C-suite. For every 100 women promoted beyond entry level, there are 130 men that are promoted. And at current rates, it will take more than 100 years to reach gender equality in the C-suite. That is very sobering. So we'd like to go ahead and start getting a question out there. And we're just going to kind of have this more as a conversation, so jump in whenever you'd like. Give an example, though, of a time that challenged you outside of your comfort zone.
Well, I'll start off and I will say this, okay? My mother started our restaurant, which is Los Barrios, the original one. It's been around almost 40 years. She started this with $3,000 in an old boat garage after the death of my dad. She had been in the restaurant business before, but in a very small environment. And she had asked my father to buy her this restaurant, and so he did, and then never knowing 3 years later that he would be killed in a car accident. And she was from Mexico, and they chose to speak only Spanish at home, and so we would be raised bilingually and biculturally, which helped us and has opened so many doors for my brother, my sister, and myself. However, she's the one that faced those challenges early on, not speaking the language, not knowing all of the, not being familiar with all of the rules, the regulations, but what she did was she partnered with her vendors. She partnered with the health department and said, okay, show me, teach me, how do I do this? How do I get to that level where I need to be, where you want me to be? That was what she did. That's what she knew to do. And I'm very grateful. We are very grateful for that foundation that she instilled in us and placed for our company. Because we've been there, this coming year will be 40 years, and there's a few people that have been with us since day one. Her right hand is still with us, and many others. So it's a testament to what she was able to do in spite of all of the challenges that she faced.
Yeah, that's a great story. I'm Carin Stutz. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Red Robin Restaurants, and I've been a president and CEO at other restaurant companies as well. I'm really in an interesting and I think a unique organization. We have gender equity and gender parity at our organization today. So we have my boss CEO is Denny Marie Post, and we have 8 people on our executive team, 4 women, 4 men. We have 4 women and 4 men on our board of directors. Our chairman is a woman as well. So we're breaking the mold a little bit and really learning a lot about each other and and how we can make a difference out there in the organization and in the industry. So we think that's really important. I think when I first thought about moving up, there was a group out there, some of you may have heard, called the Women's Foodservice Forum. And I attended that in its infancy, probably in 1994 or 1995. And they did a survey with all of the members. And one of the questions were along the lines of, how many of you would like to be a CEO? And when the results came back, the answer was 0. Not one of us had the guts to put down that we wanted to be a CEO. When I read that and I thought about it, I was like, well, why not me? And then I really started thinking very differently about my career. and and was able to ultimately achieve that. But I think the first part is you just have to believe that you can, and you have to have the courage to go for it.
One of the things I'd say about that is I think the climate, the relationship between partners has changed or become more flexible over time. So younger people are looking at those roles as husband and wife or partners differently today than they were 30 years ago. So if you as a woman are considering a job that's much more responsibility, then maybe you have to think a little bit out of the box in your home situation as well. And so maybe your husband or your partner, or a nanny, a family member, whatever, you reorganize those duties so it doesn't have to be the way it used to be in the 1950s. So I think younger people
who your people are and who needs to be put in those positions. And if it's a woman, then you're right about them saying, me? No, I can't do that. Yes, you can. If you believe in them, if you instill that in them, it is amazing because you can watch them fly and they will soar. So I think that's very important. As long as you know your people and know where they belong, if they belong, and if they need to be at that level, they need to be there. No. They need to know that. They need to know that.
Yeah, that's great, because I feel a lot of times women, we're always by nature just kind of hard workers, but sometimes unless you have somebody encouraging you to take that next step, sometimes that's just what it takes. So I'm glad you all do that in your businesses. It means so much to other women. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but we'll kind of keep the conversation going more specifically to this. But as a leader, how do you stay mindful of who's at the table and who is not? And I know Carin's kind of touched on that about how Red Robin does that, but I'd like to hear from some of you. And
I think again, it's KYP, know your people, know who deserves to be in that position, who's earned it, and who demonstrates the ability to do it, because a lot of times it's taken for granted that somebody that's been there the longest should get it, but that's not always the case. I mean, what you're doing, people are watching, you're being watched, if you're just doing it naturally because that's who you are, you're that hardworking person that has that work ethic, people are watching, people are making note, and even if it means that you're going to leapfrog somebody, well, that person wasn't doing what they should have been doing, I think it's okay to be aware of those people and let them shine.
I think we're more fledgling than you guys. For us, if somebody offers to do the job, they generally get it. If they show an interest and they say, yes, hey, I can do that, then we're game. So it's not like we're picking and choosing from 10 people. Somebody says, hey, I know IT. I could help you with that.
You're hired.
Yeah, great.
You got the job.
Okay. So.
And I was going to ask about that because from my experience, I'm a communications marketing. And so do you take people that are within even more of a restaurant background and take them to be marketing people or communications, or do they split positions sometimes, or how does that work? Do y'all hire external?
Both.
Both.
We have both.
I'm sorry.
I was just saying because it also goes with the position, or with the question that we were talking about, which was, as for myself as a communications and marketing person, how do you also hire for those kind of people, or do you move people up to, say they started as a waiter or waitress and maybe they were a bartender, but is that somebody you would also take to be a marketing or a communications person within your company?
We hire out on that.
Okay.
We have a PR person, and we do have one person who's sort of a jack of all trades. She does our payroll, so she's head of HR. She is in charge of IT, and she does all our emails, promotional emails. So she wears three hats. We recently hired an accountant from the outside. But generally, for management positions, we try to hire from within.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that's good, because I feel like sometimes if you know that industry and you are given that opportunity, a lot of times that works out internally too.
As independent operators, I mean, you wear a million hats, and sometimes so does your staff. I mean, because you see that they have the ability to help you. So on that note as well, we do the same. I mean, oh, you want to do that? You can do that? Great, come on. You're in charge now. And so quickly they become director of whatever.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we're probably a little bit more structured.
Yes, y'all are definitely more structured.
But that's okay too. I mean, I think that the key message here is making sure that you get the right talent,
Right.
surfaced. And I think one of the roles that we play is to make sure that the talent is ready. And so we have a group called Women's Excellence, and all of our regions, everybody out there has different programming. We just tackle one leadership competency at any given time, whether it's risk-taking or strategy or time management. But the one key thing that I've found with women is they seem to be most intimidated by financial skills. And boy, I would say there's one thing that really opens the door, especially in the corporate world, is really learning the financial skills. And most of us, we grew up and we think, there's a P&L and then maybe capital is free, because you never really get to the balance sheet or some of the other programs. I would say, the one thing that I've spent probably most of my career is really teaching a lot of financial skills as well. And I just found that truly opens doors for folks as well. So,
Great. Well, thank you all. So we've talked a little bit about, where you are current day, but let's talk about some of the things that led up to where you are now. So what are some of those issues that you had to deal with, maybe that were very challenging in your experience? Any kind of internal power structures early in your career compared to now? How did you navigate through some of those?
well, I could start. I worked, mostly in the corporate side. So I've worked for the big chains, McDonald's, Wendy's, Applebee's, Chili's, Red Robin. So I really probably navigated through a lot of those companies, and really awesome experiences everywhere. Earlier on in my career, when I was thinking about it, I got passed over for the director job 7 times. And each time I was absolutely sure it was going to be mine, right? So it was like, okay, what do I need to do? Let's see, my restaurants are the cleanest. I'm developing more talent than anybody. I tried to think of every possible reason or ranking that I could go after. So I remember the 7th time I walked in, and I could see Ron, my boss, standing outside. It was our offices were in the back of a restaurant at the time, and he's like, "Hey, Carin, I got great news for you." And I'm like, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to get promoted." And he said, "There's someone here I want you to meet. His name is Howard, and I know we always ask you to train him. We're going to ask you to train him, and when he's done, he's going to be your boss."
Oh my!
And I was like so deflated. I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? So I looked at Ron, and I know I got my new boss there, and my boss's boss, and I should have said something really brilliant. Instead, I throw my hands on my hips, and I said, "Are you kidding me, Ron? When's it going to be my turn?" And he looked at me and he said, "Are you kidding me, Carin? There's not a person in this organization that thinks you want to move up." Holy cow. What a lesson. I had never had the courage to say, I want to move up. I would like to be in the next level. Am I doing the right things? What does it take to get there? What a lesson for me. But I can tell you, I learned to be an advocate for myself and have the courage to, put yourself out there and say, hey, these are the things I'm working on. And your boss will quickly tell you if you're heading in the right direction or not. But then my career took off. So a big lesson. Sometimes we just stand in our own ways.
That's a great comment. That is, because it's, even in our industry, I mean, in our organization, I mean, ours is family owned and operated. It's all family, and we all say and do, but so I can see where yours was, it's very different. I mean, I can pick and choose what I want to do and what gets delegated. You know, my brother who leads the organization, he can do the same thing. And I will say this, that for a while, being the only woman there in the organization with our management team, it was an issue about, we were redoing bathrooms, and I said, well, there needs to be a changing table in the men's room too. And they all looked at me like, what? I go, uh-huh. Why does mom always have to get up from her dinner? Dad needs to go too. And so, you know, things like that, it's the courage. You're absolutely right. It's the courage to just go out and ask, say things. And I know a lot of times there are questions that we feel like, oh, I don't want to ask that because it may sound, you know, like I'm not really smart. But if you don't know the answer to that question, and you need to know the answer to that question, ask the question. Definitely.
Thank you.
As far as challenges related to my gender, I really haven't had that many. I mean, to tell you the truth, I was a geologist with Conoco, and before that, another small company. I worked out in the field. I think I was one of the first women to work in the field for them back a long time ago. And there was some worry whether I would be accepted. I was fully accepted. I was treated very nicely, got along with everybody very well. When I opened the restaurant, you know, just like I said, I asked for help a lot and was given that help with open arms. So I really have not run across the roadblocks that I think some women are running across. So, you know, I think you just have to take it. It's yours, and you deserve it if you're prepared to receive it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about other women as well. Like how do you work with other women, in particular advocates? How do you advocate for yourself, maybe within your organization or externally as well, for other women in general? So how do you advocate for yourself or other women internally or outside of your organization?
Well, when I got to Red Robin, I will tell you, I had 10 vice presidents. I think we had a clumsy org structure, like too many people at the top and not enough people close enough to the restaurant. So we kind of shifted that a little bit. I'm down to 2, and they're both women. And by far, they earned those roles by having the best results in the organization, and they are absolutely amazing. You know, it's so interesting, and I watch how women treat other women. So some of you out there have had a woman boss. It's like, I always hear it's either an awesome experience or it's not. You know, there seems to be no middle ground. And I know there's a book and there's a lot of articles back in my generation early on. It'd be when woman got to the top, there was this expression called tripping the prom queen, right? So in other words, we didn't want anybody smarter or prettier or better than us coming up the ladder. And I don't see that today. Thank God. I really believe that women are looking out for other women. You know, so the first thing I always say to us is make sure we make our jobs look attractive. If we're the women out there going, oh my God, I am sacrificing everything. I have no family life. I have, you know, instead I try to really focus on what's great about the job, and then bring people along with us. I mentor as much as I can. I volunteer as much as I can, and try to be as visible as I can, because I think this is an amazing career for women, and I'd like more people to have a seat at the table.
Excellent. Thank you.
You know, watching and learning, very, very, very important. And you know, I've been in the restaurant business since I was 9, 20 years. Just kidding. I've been in the restaurant business since I was 9. I mean, that's a long, long time. And I watched and learned how my mother did it. My mother, who did not have all of those skills, but she asked a lot of questions. She asked for the help. And I saw what she did. She reached out to her her group of helpers, her workers, and she said, you know what? You're going to come out on the floor. You need to come out of the kitchen. You can be on the floor. You need to do this. And she brought these women out when they didn't think they could do it. And now we can't get them back in the kitchen if we wanted them to, because they have flourished. They shine. They've done so well. Being a constant cheerleader, that's what my mom was. Believing in them, that's what I learned. So, I mean, I will say this, and I think most of you guys know this, whatever your attitude is, it's contagious. So, remember that. If it's a great attitude, that's what they're going to pick up. If it's not a great attitude, that's what they're going to pick up. And so then it's a reflection of you on your team, in your company, in your organization. So I think, being a constant cheerleader for these women that are there, because I agree with you, it is a great industry for women to be in, absolutely.
And I have the privilege of living in San Antonio and seeing Diana a lot around town, so I'm going to also add on that she's very involved in our San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, in addition to other chambers, but that's one that I'm involved in, so it's so good to go to a lot of the meetings and see her shining face all the time, smiling. And you're also in the Grand Dames.
Oh, Les Dames d'Escoffier,
sorry.
Women in the Culinary. I'm not a Grand Dame. That's Rosemary Kowalski. She is a Grand Dame. She's on an international level. But I belong to Les Dames d'Escoffier. Yeah. It's a group of women in the culinary profession. And we are a great group. I have learned so much from these women. Mm-hmm. And it is a great group that allows us to mentor, to help, to raise money. We have an aspirations grant, and our fundraiser is in September, and that fundraiser is helping. We actually, with last year's money that was raised, we helped, our organization of 70 women helped 6 or 7 women that were affected by Hurricane Harvey at the coast. So it's, we just got to stick together, help each other out. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go against the grain a little bit.
Go for it.
I do believe in women's organizations because it's a safe place where you can discuss things that are particular to you. But if you're going to belong to a women's organization, you should also belong to organizations that include men, because the real world includes men. And
absolutely.
I think the way that you're going to flourish is if you can do well in the same room with men. So, those types of organizations are good to a point, but I do believe that you need to be, integrated in with the whole population. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I think you have to have men at the table as well. It's so interesting, and I think I would love even the women on the panel here, their thoughts about this. Because if I'm sitting around and if it's the 4 women here in the front row, we're having a conversation, I can assure you that after the conversation, I wouldn't be thinking about now, how did you say that? Or did you say that in a certain way? But if I add you, sir, to the mix, afterwards I'd be going, oh, were we succinct enough? Because we love to tell stories sometimes, or maybe, and I have a husband, 2 sons, and 4 grandsons. So I am surrounded by guys who will tell me, how was everything? It was fine. Okay, that's not enough for me. But,
right.
but somewhere in the middle, I'm always trying to find the answer. So I would just be curious from a communication standpoint, if you just feel like you can bring your whole self to work, or if you feel like you try to be more succinct or terse if men are in the room.
I am also the mother of 3 boys and my husband. Even our dog is a boy. I mean, there's boy everywhere. And it's the same. You don't get a lot of information from the boys. But at our work environment, I mean, you make comments and the guys are like, wow, I didn't see it like from that perspective. So you have to bring, sometimes you bring things out and they're like, why are you saying that? And you tell them, well, because this can lead to this, to lead to this, to lead to that, which the guys do as well for us girls. I mean, their thought process is very different. So I'm going to kind of go off here, but my boys went to an all-boy Catholic high school, and they did a study. We were at a meeting, and they did a study, and they said, okay, we gave a group of 6 girls and a group of 6 boys the same task. So the task was go to the mall, go to the Gap, buy this pair of jeans, and bring it back. So they chartered them, and the girls went in, and the Gap was right here, and they went like this. And the last thing they did was go to the Gap hours later and go and finish, take it back. The boys walked straight into the Gap, walked out, left, and went and delivered the jeans.
Yes.
Because they just think differently.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean that they cannot, that you can't. You have to, and they will, and they do.
Yes.
Yeah. Here we are.
Good, good. And I was going to mention that also about Deanna's sons. They've all gone to Central Catholic, which is an all-male dominated school, and she is a proud Central mom, so she works very well with all the
And
men in the
Melissa's about to be
community
as
as
proud
well.
Central
Yes.
mom and wife.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you all for that information. I mean, it's good right there. You have to work with men, of course, and in all leadership roles, but it is nice when somebody can come and kind of help mentor you, so it's good when y'all offer that to other women as well, in or outside of your organization. So let's talk a little bit now, maybe some things within the organization. When it comes to mothers and fathers in the industry, what can a company do to support flexible time necessary for parents? And maybe this is just beyond maternity leave. What is the best advice that you ever received or used as a power mantra, I guess, in that same instance?
I think you have to be conscious of that, and you have to be able to let them do what they need to do. That's what we do in our organization, and it's always been that way. My mom was that way. Our team of leadership is that way. I mean, we're very understanding and compassionate for situations, because life does happen.
I agree with that. I think it's for men and women.
Yes.
You need flexibility in your hours. You need to be able to make up those hours if you have to go to doctor's appointment or go to school or whatever it is. So in our business, we can do that generally. If you are a waiter, a server, or a bartender, it's difficult. I mean, you have to trade shifts or something. But for management, it's just flexible. Just try to be flexible.
And I think that's one of the advantages of our industry. Yes, I know we work long hours, and it seems like sometimes there's a minimal number of days off, but the time really is flexible. You work well with your team. I do think there are those opportunities to get the time you need. This is one of the most generous group of people in this industry that I've ever met. I have a daughter. My daughter-in-law works in a healthcare company. My other daughter-in-law is a doctor at a VA hospital. Neither one of them had any maternity leave, 0. And so even though our company has basically 6 weeks, but I think we always continue to look at that now. I think in a lot of both men and women are taking off more, even with the birth of children, and we celebrate that and look at that as our future generation of team members coming along.
That's
so,
right.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in this day and age, a lot of, the millennials and beyond millennials, but they like the flexibility almost more than they like the pay. They'd rather, give them the opportunity to take more vacation, to work when they want to at their own pace and schedule, and you have a lot less people calling in or leaving for an extra quarter or 50 cents somewhere else. It's like very
Yeah, I
true.
think the key too is just as women too is speak up, and you got to say what you need. We can't always read your minds,
Right.
But I will tell you, I don't know too many people who wouldn't step up and try to help you accomplish or take the time that you need, as long as we know.
Okay. Thank you. And I apologize. I think I rolled the last question into the first one, so I apologize for that. So we're already coming up on the time, and we will leave it open for a few questions. So just real quickly, we'll end with the best advice or quote that you've ever received or used as a power mantra. And one example, that which blocks the path is the path. So that's just something to kind of think about. But if you can share something with us as a group to close out, appreciate that.
I have one, and it involves a little bit of a story. But when Hugo and I got together and we were thinking about doing another restaurant, I asked Hugo, why don't you cook the food of your country? And he said, oh, that would be hard, that would be, really difficult because of the way the food's made there. I don't know if I could do that. And I said, well, why can't it be you? It's going to be someone. Because when we had gone to Mexican restaurants together, he wouldn't recognize the food. And, we began studying that and learning that, each area in Mexico has a very different cuisine. So he wasn't recognizing what was more or less Tex-Mex were the restaurants we were going to. And I said, somebody's going to do it. Why can't it be you? And then I turned that around, and it was him. And we did do it. And he was successful doing this. So I turned it around on myself and said, why can't it be me? So
Absolutely.
I would say that's my mantra. Why can't it be me?
Love it. Thank you.
Mine, I guess maybe it's a little more about career advancement. And so this is going to sound kind of weird, but it's who is in the room when the decision is made. And so you think about promotions, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, you used to think, oh, it's somebody who they golf with, or it's their friend or whatever. But if you really think about it that way, who is in the room when the decision is made? And it really caught my attention once. I was an SVP at Applebee's, I will just be honest with you, and they were going to promote someone to the COO, executive vice president, to oversee all of the operations, which at the time was around 2,000 restaurants. So I go to HR right now, because I'm an advocate for myself, and I say, hey, I'd like to put my name in for that position. And the HR person said, well, I think that's interesting. He said, ask me that question. Who's in the room when the decision is made? And how many of them are going to support you? And I'm like, well, there's seven. 7 men are in the room, and why wouldn't they support me? I'm thinking, I've got really strong results. Our stock has tripled. Really good guest scores. All of our restaurant metrics are strong. And so then he asked me another question. He goes, let me ask you to think about it this way. In the last year, how many times have you gone to any 7 of those individuals and asked for any advice on anything that you're doing? I'm like, 0? And he's like, wow, well, how many times did they come to talk to you and ask you about something you're working on or that they're working on? And I'm like, well, I'm always in the field. I'm always out in the restaurants. And he goes, you didn't answer my question. I said, okay, 0. And he goes, let me ask you the question again. How many of them are going to support you? And then I said, 0. And he goes, there you go. You got to network, right? And so it was really along the lines of is making sure that it doesn't necessarily have to be political when someone gets promoted. I honestly had no relationship with any of them. And I think that was another key thing for me is a lot of times as a woman, or at least as an operator, you can have your head down, you're focused on your business, looking down in the organization. And I never took the time to look up and build networks. Once I stepped up and went and met with all of them and we talked about the business, I was better and the company was better. And I really learned a lot. So sometimes when I think about promotions, now I think about who's in the room when the decision is made and what kind of network or relationship do I have with each one of those. And it does make a difference.
Fantastic.
In our organization, my brother said this one time and it just stuck. If you pursue excellence, success will tackle you. That's it. And it's the truth. It's like, yes, I want, you have to want it. And then you're just blown away by the success that comes with it. You just have to understand that that's going to be, that's your decision, Okay, I'm going to be excellent. And then And I see it in some of our hostesses that say, you know what, I want to be a server. Okay, let's go. And they do it, and they are like, and it's kind of sometimes like a little wake-up call to some of the others that have been there for a while, and they go, wow, she just took off. Okay, because she wants that, and so that's something that I share with my children, with any groups that we're mentoring. Just go for it. It's going to come back. Success will tackle you. It's awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Fantastic. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you, ladies. This was very eye-opening in a lot of different ways, and hopefully all of you found it motivating and inspiring like I did. I mean, these are three very powerful women in their industry. I'm just going to ask if y'all would give them a hand right now as well. Thank you. Thank y'all. So the time, my watch says 12:43. What time do we have until to take questions? 7 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to flip the slide here, see if it works. There we go, Q&A. Okay, I guess we'll just take questions from the floor, whoever would like to ask. And yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, you know what, do you have a mic over there? Is there any more mics? Maybe we can we pass this mic to her, please? Thank you.
What would you say is one of your major challenges that you face right now in your leadership role?
I'll give y'all my mic.
Oh, I think finding employees right now is, I think a lot of people are in that same position. I think that's a challenge, and that's one of the biggest challenges right now.
For us, it would be getting new employees and training, the training program.
Yeah, I would say for 40 years, I think I've always answered the same thing, that my good people stay, right? What am I doing and how do I deserve to be their leader, that they're going to want to stay and work along with us? But I would add, I think just watching the business in the last probably 2 years, that the amount of change in the consumer,
Oh, yes.
and their proclivity to want to go more off-premise for those of us that have restaurants, that have a lot of seats that we want to fill, is a real challenge to get into the mindset of today's consumer and really understand how we serve them, where they want it and when they want it, and be able to deliver that same type of experience off-premise that matches the experience that they would know from our brands on-premise.
You might need to come up here and get the mic.
Oh, she's-
From any or all of you, when was the time that you took a risk and did it have a positive or negative outcome? I want to know the specific risk and if it had a positive or negative outcome.
For me, it was changing careers, I'd say, from being a geologist to being restaurateur. And it was, obviously, I've never worked in a restaurant before, so I didn't know anything. And I just started from scratch, so it was very difficult, and it had a positive outcome, but over time. Took a while.
There's a restaurant called Cozy. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's they go through about 9 CEOs every 5 years, kind of. But I put my hand up and said, I really wanted to get to that CEO role, and I took that position in Chicago. The company had never made a profit. It's about 124 locations. I made a profit in my second quarter, and really started to make a difference there. But I will say there's another thing you have to learn is know your board. You take a risk sometimes. And I actually still have the letter from a former board member that told me don't take the position. But sometimes you say, okay, you want to get to that level. And sometimes you just have to put yourself in a tougher or riskier situation to do it. So you know what, after 18 months, I did leave that job. The board and I had a discussion, and They wanted to go one direction, I wanted to go another. I said, okay, are you firing me? They said, no, we're not firing you. We want you to go to this direction. But either way, it was somewhat of a failure, but gosh, I learned so much on taking on that head role. And so I look back at it and, you know, I was warned up front, but I learned a lot and I wouldn't trade that experience.
I think that in my family, it was my mother. She took that $3,000 investment and every risk that she had, that she took, paid off. It was a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, but it paid off exponentially, because not only did it pay off because she was successful, but she over the 40 plus years mentored people, taught people, inspired people. It was it was her last hope. Her dream was not to be in the restaurant business, but she had to do something, and so that's what she knew she could do. So I think her risk really paid off, because it taught so much to so many, and of course she was very successful in spite of being in San Antonio with over 1,000 Mexican restaurants. She did it, and she put all her eggs in one basket, and it was her faith. She had tremendous faith.
All right. Thank you, ladies. And I think that's all the time we have for questions today. So we're going to wrap up this session. But again, I just want to thank Carin Stutz, Diana Barrios Trevino, and also Tracy Vaught for their time today and all their insight. And I hope you all have a very great conference. It looks amazing out there. I think I'm going to walk around myself. And I just want to thank the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to be here today as well, and for all of you to be here today.
Let's give them a
Thank
hand.
you.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate it so much. And that concludes our presentation. If you have additional questions, I'm sure they'll be here for a few minutes to visit.